Welcome to Sincast, presented by Cinemasins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Sincast. With you, as always, this is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined by Jeremy Scott, the voice of Cinemasins.
Hello.
And Barrett Share, music video sins writer.
Hello.
Today we're going to be talking about the best movies of the years that we were alive. We're going to start that first. We're not going to go through 1975 all the way to 2016, but we're going to start with 1975. Then we're going to go and opine what our favorite year, best year in movies is. So we're going to start this with the 1975 because that is the year Jeremy was born. Jeremy, you want to take this conversation? Sure.
I'm old. So a long time ago, somebody asked a question when I was doing Q&A videos. What's your favorite movie from every year you've been alive? And I was really fascinated by that. And it seemed too good and deep a conversation to just do a one-off Q&A answer or to do it in a tweet. And then we started doing this podcast, and this is the perfect place for us to have this discussion. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go year by year, 1 year per episode until we're done, from the year I was born till today. And we're going to debate and discuss our favorite movies from that year. And then we're going to collectively have to pick the Cinemasins Sincast favorite movie from that year. And there will be an official list at the end you can put on the blog or something. All right, so...
I'm talking about God, the devil, hell, heaven. Do you understand? Finally!
We are the knights who say...
I'm the oldest. I was born in 75. I didn't see any movies that year. But I have seen many from that year since then. And for the sake of general discussion, I'm going to throw out a couple that I really love, and we'll let you guys chime in. This is the year that Jaws came out. Mm-hmm. And if you might be tempted to just call it right there. But if you dig a little deeper, this year had a lot of great movies, and a lot of people's favorite movie, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, came out that year. Mm-hmm. And everyone I know from my generation has that movie memorized. And so, how do we quantify this as we discuss and debate? That'll be interesting to see. Was it the best movie artistically? Was it the movie that made the most lasting impact on the industry? And might even change from year to year. But I'm throwing out Jaws and Holy Grail to start this discussion as movies I think might be the best of 75.
I don't know if I can argue with it. Those two movies are extremely important to me as far as this year is concerned, especially Monty Python, the Holy Grail. Really, it's Jaws and Monty Python are like 1 and 1A or whatever you want to call it. But as a huge fan of Airplane when I was growing up, I didn't know about Holy Grail yet until like much later, like when I was like 12 or 13. When I finally watched it, I was like, whoa, there's another like really funny comedy kind of, it came out before Airplane. Wow, that's amazing. I have watched Monty Python, the Holy Grail probably 40 times. Yeah. It's just one of those movies. And it's just consistently funny every time you watch it. You know what's coming up and it's still hilarious.
Yeah.
And in the Jaws, I frequently put Spielberg as one of my favorite directors. He's just one of those guys that, when I was 5, E.T. came out. So, anything Spielberg did, Jaws, Close Encounters, and E.T. and, Jurassic Park and all these movies, I'm like, that's the reason why I watch movies is because of Spielberg. So, Jaws is just so excellent. It's not a movie that you could make today either.
Right.
Why is that?
Because if you were to make a movie like Jaws, you would have studio heads saying, I want to see the shark more.
Yeah.
And you would have, obviously we've had shark movies since then, where there's there's just an innate need to put some sort of CGI shark in there that's menacing. Spielberg got lucky.
Tornado.
Yeah, exactly. But Spielberg got lucky with this movie. I mean, it was a terrible rubber robotic shark that they didn't want to show very often. And as it turns out, if you let people imagine what the shark is like, then it's a little bit more frightening. But still, if you made Jaws today, you wouldn't have all the character development that they throw in. I mean, it takes a while for them to actually go out into the water and try to find this thing.
God, I could argue that the movie's not even about the shark; it's about those three guys on the boat.
Oh, it definitely is. It's sort of, it's sort of your kind of modern day for 75 Moby Dick type of movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, and those three guys, I mean, there's those nice, long, very entertaining conversations on the boat and everything. They're talking about their scars and they're, the singing the songs and all that. The movie takes its time and it builds suspense through that. And, you would never be able to make that today. There's no way that any major studio like Universal would allow a movie like Jaws to be made like that.
Right.
It's the anti-Dawn of Justice, right?
Yeah, it really is. When you think about it, it's the anti-Dawn of Justice.
One of my favorite lines from movies just ever, for some reason, want to get drunk and fool around.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Classic to me. Anytime it's around there. But yeah, it's like 4 or 5 different movies in one, right? It's spanning genres of horror and action and suspense and comedy even.
Yeah, and I also, I mean, I like just the part where after Brody much against his will opens the beaches up because the townspeople are all like, we got to make money and stuff. After he opens up the beach and that woman's kid gets eaten, and the woman comes up and starts yelling at him and screaming and all that. And in a typical movie, you're like, oh, well, it's not his fault or whatever, but he owns it. He owns the thing. He realizes it is his fault. He should have done more, to close the beaches and say, you know what, screw your money. You're going to lose all your money if the shark keeps going around and eating people. So yeah, Jaws is fantastic.
Yeah, you got a lot of influential stuff in 1975.
Indeed.
Holy Grail is obviously the absurdist comedy, satire type of thing. Rocky Horror Picture Show is a big thing that really came out of nowhere. I mean, there was a lot of things that really broke the mold or set the mold for future stuff, right?
Yeah, and the Rocky Horror Picture Show is awful. I mean, that movie, you can't put that in here.
My point being from my perspective, 1975 was a great year for music movies.
Oh yeah.
And Rocky Horror Picture Show it's not a great cinematic achievement, but musically it's terrific.
Yeah, the songs are good.
Yeah.
But God, that movie is it's so long. It seems like it's only an hour and 40 minutes, but it's like forever. It feels like it's 3 hours.
But there's I think a cultural impact there that at least earns it a spot on the discussion list. Even if it's a terrible movie, it's look at what it still is today. There are people that adore that thing. And, in terms of setting the stage for these group showings of The Room where people throw things at the screen, that was all Rocky Horror Picture Show that laid the groundwork for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And talk about quality, under influence. The Who's Tommy came out this year too.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that was a huge achievement. There had been a few before, obviously with the Beatles and things like that, but nobody had really taken it to the scope of the full rock opera, cinematically at least. And that is a movie that I've probably watched 30, 35 times. And then you have what I'm going to put as the challenger. There's a few challengers to Jaws, but my main challenger would be Robert Altman's Nashville, which we talked about a little bit before. But man, that is such a rewatchable film. It's got its flaws, but the music in it and the fact that everybody's singing their own part, they wrote their own part. I mean, it's so cohesive, and it talk about influential too. I think that really had a big impact.
I know that and I'm not alone in this. People from Nashville, and I'm one of these people. When you watch it, you're like, oh my God, he's just making fun of Nashville. When you first watch it. And the movie's 3 hours, so it doesn't have a lot of like, I'm going to go watch this again type of, feel to it. But I actually gave Nashville a couple more chances, and I realized that, while there are some things that are kind of specific to Nashville as far as, making fun of us, it really is the United States as a whole that it is satirizing. And, it's an interesting historical document. It's a Nashville before I was born. And there's the places like the Exit Inn don't look at all like the Exit Inn anymore. Mm-hmm. But there's that Parthenon still there in Centennial Park, the Parthenon that,
Great scene.
Yeah. And, I mean, that movie has, it's just, this is what defines Altman-esque, right? The multiple sprawling stories.
Yep.
And you don't know exactly where it's headed, but once it gets there, you're like, oh, all this culminated into that. And I have really grown some super appreciation for this movie over the years.
I have a friend that would beat my ass if I didn't bring up One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think could be a challenger for the top spot as well.
Actually, the one that won Best Picture in 1975.
Yeah, because it's fantastic. It's great. The performances are great, but it's one of those movies that history has decided was really important. So a lot of I've seen college professors showing it to students, and I'm sure it's something they show in film school a lot. It's because it touches on so many different. I don't know. I really love that movie, but what do you guys think?
It's fun. I've seen on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest twice. I don't really hold it as high in regard as a lot of people do. It's never really connected with me personally, that much. I think it's a good movie for sure. It's just not anything that's really hit me that well, but I bet Barrett has some more to say about this.
A little bit. So I've worked in psychiatry for the last 15 to 16 years, and it really hits home with me on a number of different levels. My wife is a psychiatric nurse, the polar opposite of Nurse Ratched. But it's iconic. It's like I brought his performance up in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest when we were talking about The Shining, because Jack Nicholson's performance is iconic. Louise Fletcher's performance is iconic. The guy that plays the chief is like DeVito, Christopher Lloyd, like everybody in there is a specific piece that works beautifully together. And with Kesey's story and everything, and just the arc of the whole narrative, it's influential in the way that Foreman shot it and the way that it was presented and that kind of thing. The performances are influential and iconic. It helped define Nicholson's career. And I think the story itself being set in where it was is hugely impactful. I could see why this is taught in colleges.
Yeah. I know. Just one little note about this. I know that Ken Kesey, the guy who wrote the book, hates this movie.
Wow.
He has some really strong. I can't find it right now, but he has some really strong line. Something about what would you think if someone took one of your kids and murdered them, or something like that. It's something like that.
So Nicholson has a track record betwing Kesey and Stephen King right afterwards of pissing off the author of the performance.
That's exactly right. You know what? Okay, so out of this group, you guys have already taken all the best ones, obviously. But there is, okay, so Dog Day Afternoon I like okay, but I'm going to go with 3 Days of the Condor. 3 Days of the Condor is really fun, and I'm telling you, that's another reason why I probably don't like Winter Soldier that much, is that it was compared to that movie so many times during it.
Robert Redford.
Well, Robert Redford and the whole conspiracy government type thing. But man, you want to talk about a paranoia thriller that is amazing and works on so many levels. It's 3 Days of the Condor. That's just an entertaining movie through and through. Yeah. It's not going to go up against all these other movies that we talked about, but it is something that I hope that out of this conversation, if you haven't seen that movie, you need to go see it.
Yeah, and I have the Stepford Wives listed as another sort of culturally important film, but not one that I would put in an argument for the top spot. But if you want to go and explore 1975 movies, I would probably watch all the ones we brought up.
Oh yeah, for sure. And there's also there's a Stanley Kubrick movie that came out this year, Barry Lyndon, which is that is an interesting trial in patience, by the way.
Some of his movies are.
That's a movie that if you're a really big fan of Kubrick and you pop that in, you're like, what the hell is this? Well, I don't know what's going on. And it's a period piece and it's slow and it's, and then you read about it and it's like, oh, so Kubrick found a way to light with candlelight. That's great. This movie isn't very good, I don't think, that type of thing. But, Barry Lyndon is also, if you're a Kubrick, completest, you have to watch that.
Yeah, for sure.
This is the one you have to scratch off last.
Yeah, exactly.
Are we ready to vote?
Yeah, let's vote.
All right, Barrett.
Well, I think this is going to be the easiest one, our first one, but you can't go wrong. I think the number 2 would be One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, even though the Holy Grail is so influential. It has to go to Jaws.
All right, Chris.
Yeah, the two that you mentioned, Jaws and Monty Python, are going to be mine, just because of just sheer watchability on both of those movies' parts.
All right, but if I force you to choose one at gunpoint,
Monty Python.
Wow, you just created suspense for the final vote, because I threw out both of those, and I'm going Jaws.
Well, and considering that I would put Jaws at second, and I think Barrett also mentioned Jaws, Jaws is going to probably win this.
Yeah, I'd put Jaws at number 1 and Cuckoo's Nest at number 2.
Yeah,
right. So we have collectively decided here on the Cincast that Jaws is our favorite / the best movie from 1975.
Yay! Yeah. Yay! And there was much rejoicing. No irony. No irony.
I'm sure is going to have a drink to celebrate.
He is. Yes. He has been dying for us to mention Jaws because nobody else does.
Why won't they talk about me?
There is an interesting video, if you can find it, of Spielberg he's watching something, he's listening or something, whatever. He's in a room and he's waiting for his name to be called for Best Director on Jaws. And I don't think he gets the nomination. And he's like, and it's like in his room where everybody's expecting him to get a nomination for it and everything. And he's like, everybody's drinking and all this other stuff. If you can find that video, it's pretty fun to watch. I think that's what I don't think he got nominated though in that movie. No, he wasn't. He wasn't nominated.
Oh, you checked really quick.
So yeah, there's a video of him just like expecting to get nominated because it's the number 1 movie of 1975. And I think the picture is a foregone conclusion, and then his name doesn't get called.
Oh no,
it's amazing.
All right, so we'll do 76 on the next Cincast, and I guess now, Chris, you want to transition us into the main topic for today?
It was a very good year. The best years.
Okay, so on to what we think is the best year in movies. Now, obviously, I think all three of us had some different criteria on this.
Sure.
And obviously, none of us has, except for me, I think, seen all the major movies in 1 year. And for me, that was 2005. And that'll be a whole other discussion someday. Because 2005 is the most garbage year ever created. Just so happens to be the 1 year that I watched every major release that came out. But yeah, we haven't seen everything in every year. So obviously this is something that is, it's not totally scientific or anything, but, it's something that's kind of fun to think about. we did some research and everything. And so Barrett, what do you think is your best year of movies?
One of the most recent ones that I remember being the most enjoyable to watch was 2007.
Yeah,
and
really good year.
When I thought about 2007, like it was a lot of stuff that, publicly just enjoyable, like Superbad and like Hot Fuzz and Grindhouse and stuff like that. But what really struck me going through it is that it was a terrific year for directors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Coens doing No Country for Old Men.
Mm-hmm.
You had Paul Thomas Anderson, which my friend Jonathan says I've got a boner for this movie, There Will Be Blood.
Guess what? I have a boner for that movie too.
We've all got boners right now. Just
right. Totally.
Apatow had Knocked Up, which really, cemented him. Fincher had Zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
Affleck had Gone Baby Gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Brad Bird had Ratatouille, and Greengrass was Born Ultimatum. So it was a really, really great year for directors.
And I would even add Sean Penn with Into the Wild.
Yep.
And I got a bunch of movies listed for 2007, but yeah, you're right. Really good director year.
I was going to say, right before you said good year for directors, I thought you were going to say good year for dramas. Because, you have Michael Clayton, Atonement, all the ones you've mentioned, No Country, There Will Be Blood, Into the Wild, Zodiac, Gone Baby Gone, 3:10 to Yuma came out that year. I Am Legend. The Simpsons movie, that's not a drama, but it came out that year. It was a good year maybe it was just a good year for everything.
Yeah, it's, when I did this list and looking at these years, I think this is the last really good year that I can remember. I went past 2007 and nothing was close to this one. There was something magic in the air that year. I think No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood were basically shot in about the same place too. And there were points where those productions were almost running into each other. Yeah. And they ended up being the top two, like, consideration for Best Picture that year.
Yeah. God, wouldn't you want to watch like a crossover episode or a video with like Daniel Plainview and Tommy Lee Jones?
Yeah. Plainview and Anton Chigurh looking at it, doing something.
Somebody asked a question that I have on the list for questions later. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it now. Is that, what they asked, what did we think of Fargo, the TV show, which I think we've already discussed a little, and what other movies might you want to see turned into a show the way they did Fargo? And I immediately thought of No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, it's Coen Brothers again. But if you can give me a show with new characters that has the feel of that movie, man, I'm in. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah. Other things in 2007 I listed. I don't know if you guys have seen them, but another one of the best movies of 2007 is The Lives of Others. Another really good movie. Another one is Away from Her, the Sarah Polley directed one. Another one is sort of a more adult animated, not because it has like nudity or anything in it, but Persepolis is another one that came out that year. Really good movie. And then the documentary The King of Kong came out that year as well. Another fun movie to watch. Sunshine
came out that year.
Yep.
And then movies that I've come to appreciate more on video, like Smokin' Aces and The Mist. It was just a solid year.
Yeah.
The Mist has the record for most people pissed off by its last scene.
Oh my God. That's what I love about The Mist, though. What everybody brings up is what they hate about The Mist is what I love about The Mist.
I know.
Because I hate it when it's like they're about to shoot somebody, something happens and then there's the ex machina that comes in. This time the ex machina comes in too late. And I love it. What else was on here? You had The Mist, and there's also 1408, another little Stephen King novella or short story or whatever that was turned into a pretty fun movie that came out that year.
I watch that every time it's on, I think.
Yeah. It grabs you, it puts you in. Yeah. I put a lot of stuff on here. It was a huge list. The stuff like Waitress came out. Did you ever see Waitress?
Yeah,
the Kerry Russell movie.
Yeah,
yeah, he is. And the one who wrote it, the girl who wrote the movie, she unfortunately tragically got murdered before the movie came out. But the movie itself is fantastic. You can't find more appealing people than Kerry Russell and Nathan Fillion to be sort of romantic leads in a movie. Another one, you're talking about directors, Rescue Dawn, which was the Werner Herzog movie with Christian Bale. Another movie that came out that year. It was really good.
Christian Bale and what's this? Steve Zahn.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
One of the weirdest castings ever, but I liked that movie a lot.
Yeah.
Steve Zahn goes ass backwards into some pretty amazing movies, right?
He does. He really has.
Yeah. If you've looked up Steve Zahn on IMDb, I'm sure he's got like 100 credits, and you never realized he was in so many movies.
Right.
The other one that there's I think it's Korean, The Host, came out that year too. Another fun movie.
Is that the one that the guy who did Snowpiercer directed?
Well, maybe it is. Maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't looked that up. Anyway, what is your movie, Jeremy? Your year. Sorry.
All right. Well, there are several years we still need to talk about after we all pick our favorite. But my favorite is 1999.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
And I know nobody's going to argue with me among you guys, because I'm not picking anything that, a lover of film wouldn't pick themselves. It's just so solid. I'm just going to run down at least the start of my list, and then you guys can start chiming in. My very favorite movie in the world, The Matrix, came out that year. Chris and I were working at the same theater, watching all these, and it was just, it was magical. It was almost like there was a period there where there wasn't a weekend without a really good movie. So the other ones I remember, American Beauty, The Sixth Sense. What else do you guys remember from 99 that you like?
I wrote down a whole bunch on this as well. Toy Story 2 came out that year.
Mm-hmm.
Talented Mr. Ripley. Three Kings.
Yep.
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yep.
South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. One movie that I think has gotten a huge cult following since it came out. I don't think it did anything when it came out, was 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yep.
Fight Club, obviously. Yep. The Insider, which is one of my favorites. The Iron Giant came out that year. Being John Malkovich. I love Magnolia, even though I think some people don't. Go came out that year, another movie from Doug Lyman that I really enjoy.
Well, you championed Election in a recent podcast,
and that was the next one on the list. And Office Space.
You were talking about cult followings after video, and I thought that's what you were going to mention is Office Space. That one just came out of nowhere, really. Yeah,
Office Space is another one. Run Lola Run is another one that was Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. The really fun documentary American Movie came out that year. And then I had like a whole bunch after that though, but those were the main ones.
Yeah, we got to mention.
There was an indie movie that came out in the summer. It was called The Phantom Menace.
yeah. Technically it was an independent movie because Lucas put up the money for it.
That's funny.
And then Fox distributed it.
What else, Barrett? Do you have any others?
Yeah, I love Office Space in particular on there, although I've got some problems with it that we'll talk about in a different podcast. But of course, we mentioned the Blair Witch Project came out that year. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I saw a lot of movies. This was right after I stopped working in the movie theater, but was still getting in for free. And I actually saw The Man on the Moon that year. And I remember really, really liking it. And I didn't really expect it to, because this was Jim Carrey's first real big turn into certainly biopics, but into drama. So yeah, it was enjoyable. But yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with anything this year. It's just start to finish. It was terrific.
A bunch of other ones I want to rattle off that are just eminently watchable films that came out that year, and I can't believe I forgot to say Galaxy Quest in the very opening. But Thomas Crown Affair came out that year. Bowfinger came out that year.
Yeah.
Cruel Intentions came out that year. Lake Placid, Mystery Men, Girl Interrupted, 13th Warrior, October Sky. It's just, I think this may be one of the most quoted years in cinema ever.
It's funny.
Well, what about Dogma? That was there too, right?
You know, when I was making, it did. And when I was making this list, it was funny how many like Kevin Smiths I would throw in there, because a lot of times Kevin Smith, even though he'd make some sort of stupid comedy like Clerks 2 or whatever, I'm like, I kind of enjoyed that. But Dogma was not a movie I could ever get into. I couldn't.
A lot of people couldn't.
Yeah, I just couldn't get into it. So I left it off the list, but, there's going to be some people that throw Dogma on there. But it is funny, Jeremy, you mentioned stuff like Lake Placid and 13th Warrior, and there was something else in there that was in that vein.
Mystery Men.
Mystery Men. Now, all of those movies, you can probably find more people who hate it than like it, but I love Lake Placid.
Me too, man.
That movie is so much fun, but there's a lot of people who just take it as it is. It's kind of like Cabin in the Woods, where it's just an alligator that's killing everybody. That's stupid. And they don't take in the comedy that's in that movie.
Right.
And Betty White is hilarious in that.
Oh my gosh.
That was a really good year for directors too.
Yeah.
I don't know that yeah.
Jim Jarmusch released Ghost Dog that year.
Well, was it Ghost Dog?
Yeah, Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai.
Yeah.
Tim Burton did Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah, which I don't like at all.
Yeah, I don't either.
But it did come out that year.
But it was a good coming out year, I think, for directors, right? Because Fight Club was really Fincher's big "I'm here" moment, and
even though it didn't do anything at the box office.
No. But Three Kings was the first big David O. Russell,
right?
Critically acclaimed.
Being John Malkovich.
Yeah, Being John Malkovich with Spike Jonze. Eyes Wide Shut. You had Kubrick again. Talented Mr. Ripley was Anthony Minghella.
But even Iron Giant, wasn't that the first Brad Bird movie?
Yeah, it was.
And then Election was Alexander Payne's big coming out party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had done Citizen Ruth before that, which was really good.
Yeah, I like that movie.
And then Election was his follow up. So yeah, he sort of had a coming out party there. What else? The Insider was Michael Mann.
Yep.
Magnolia's Paul Thomas Anderson.
The Sixth Sense, that was M. Night's big coming out.
Yeah. I remember M. Night after that, and it was after that and Unbreakable, and he came out with Signs. They were calling him the next Spielberg. And you know what all happened to that.
I think he was calling himself that.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. By the way, as an aside, that guy who did the host did do Snowpiercer.
I was right.
Yes. You were correct.
I win internet points.
So I wanted to insert that in before, you had people who are like, oh, come on. He's the guy who did it.
All right, Chris, hit us with your year.
Okay. So my criteria was, I had been working in movie theaters since 1993. And, so I started with that because I figured I've seen more movies from 1993 on than I have before that. Not to say that I couldn't go back into the 80s or especially the 70s and find a year that's amazing, but I had a feeling that if I went into the 70s and all that, I would find, a handful of movies that I saw and not much else to talk about. So I went through 93 to about 2013, and in the end, 1995 won it for me. So many really good movies came out in this year. Toy Story was the number one movie of the year. Apollo 13 came out that year. Seven, another Fincher. That was Fincher's, if you want to really talk about coming out party, that was his first major movie. I'm in love with Crimson Tide. That's one of my favorites. Get Shorty came out that year. Heat. Babe, The American President, 12 Monkeys. I'm a real huge fan of Clueless. Sense and Sensibility, Casino, Dead Man Walking,
Jeez.
Leaving Las Vegas, The Usual Suspects,
Jeez.
Il Postino, the Italian postman, that was obviously way better than the Kevin Costner not a remake postman. To Die For came out that year. Smoke, the movie Kids, which introduced us to Rosario Dawson, Before Sunrise, Richard Linklater, all three of those are great. The Before Sunrise, Sunset, and Midnight. A movie called Exotica came out that year. Adam Agoyan movie, really, really good. The documentary Crumb came out in 95. City of Lost Children. Living in Oblivion, which is one of my favorite movies about making movies. Kicking and Screaming came out, one of my favorite dialogue movies. And to top it off, and I've got more below, but Swimming with Sharks, hits the list. That was Kevin Spacey could not have had a better year, than 1995. Seven, The Usual Suspects, and Swimming with Sharks. And really, Swimming with Sharks is the sort of the forgotten one. It was a indie movie that didn't really, nobody really saw it. It wasn't a major release or anything, but that introduced me to the Kevin Spacey of the shouting and yelling variety of Kevin Spacey. Swimming with Sharks is a great movie. But yeah, I was really surprised about this. Every time I think about 1995, I don't really think, well, there's a few good movies here and there, I guess. But when I started writing them down, and I haven't even gotten to some of the ones like I really love but aren't great, like The Quick and the Dead came out that year, and The Basketball Diaries and Empire Records. I was like, wow, I didn't know. I thought for sure 1994 or 1999 would be it. 1994, it turns out, was actually one of the lesser ones. So yeah, 1995 is my pick.
That's a good pick. Did you even say Braveheart?
I didn't, but I put it in the below list. Now, I used to really like Braveheart, but I've faded on it a little bit over the years.
I'm looking over this list of movies that came out that year, and I'm decided I'm going to call 1995 the year of Jeremy's guilty pleasures.
Yeah,
because Waterworld. Exactly. All right, let me list a few: Bad Boys, Species.
Yeah.
Virtuosity.
Yeah.
Assassins.
Yeah.
Showgirls. Sudden Death.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat. You want to talk about, those are definitely some cult, some very specific, there's not very many people who like those movies, but man, those are great guilty pleasures.
Oh, Assassins, man. I felt like the only guy in the world that loved that movie when it came out. And I know it's silly, and of course, a couple years ago, they turned that Antonio Banderas thing into a GIF where he's leaning back and kind of kissing his hand in satisfaction or whatever. But man, I loved that movie. I feel like the girl in Jerry Maguire with that movie. I love it for the movie it almost is.
And I feel like it's definitely the last time we will see Stallone, Banderas, and Julianne Moore in one movie.
Well, that was Richard Donner too, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, well, that was what a weird 4-person pairing there to make that movie.
Yeah.
So this whole year, just looking over the movies, is basically TNT's lineup. Right? On a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
Braveheart, Waterworld, Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Tommy Boy. Which I also listed on here. The ones I put underneath as somewhats or whatever was GoldenEye, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Mr. Holland's Opus, which is, saccharine sweet drama, but I that musical number at the end always gets me. Braveheart, Mortal Kombat. I know that apparently Jeremy made a snide remark about Sabrina in one of our earlier podcasts, but I really like Sabrina. The Brady Bunch movie, which I thought was a fun sort of TV remake thing where they turned it on its head, and I thought it was really funny. Tommy Boy, Friday, Billy Madison, which is when I believe Adam Sandler was good, when I thought he was funny. Quick and the Dead, Basketball Diaries, and Empire Records.
Oh, and also Heavyweights. Did you ever see Heavyweights?
I never saw that. No.
It's good, man. It's really enjoyable. And then Major Payne. I know it's not good.
Major Payne.
It's not good.
Oh my God.
Listen, it's not good. But if I could get you somehow to watch this movie with my college roommate Brian, you would love it. because he just giggled like a schoolgirl, whatever.
Yeah.
And it made me love the movie.
I know I watched Major Payne when it came out because I was working in a movie theater when it came out, but I don't remember much about it.
I'm telling you, this is the year of my guilty pleasures. Like, there's got to be a dozen of them at least, all from this year.
Yeah.
Amazing.
See, now, I thought 1994 would be my favorite year because every time I think fondly back to really, really big movies of the 90s, I think of the 1994. I wrote down the list, and I have The Lion King there. I have Speed, Pulp Fiction, Four Weddings and a Funeral. I know a lot of people are mixed on Natural Born Killers, but I really like it. The Shawshank Redemption, which did nothing, by the way. This is a big shock to people when I tell people that the Shawshank Redemption didn't do anything at the box office in 1994. And because people hold that movie in so high regard and everything. And by the way, the Shawshank Redemption also would be a feature movie theater story whenever we get back to that, because there's a really crazy thing involving that. The Professional came out in 94.
Yep.
Hoop Dreams, another great documentary, came out in 94. Ed Wood, Quiz Show, which of course Jeremy and I both really love. The Last Seduction came out that year. Clerks, The Hudsucker Proxy, which I think Jeremy and I only like. And a movie that I always try to tell people to go watch if they can ever find it, because this is the rap Spinal Tap, Fear of a Black Hat. You have to go watch Fear of a Black Hat. That is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. But after that, you have, Forrest Gump. That's a movie that I really liked when it came out. It's sort of faded over the years. True Lies came out that year. Ace Ventura, The Crow, Reality Bites, The Ref, another Kevin Spacey showpiece before he was really famous. If you want to talk about a guilty pleasure, Surviving the Game. Did you ever see that?
Yeah, I did.
Surviving the Game is a fun movie. PCU, another really Red Rock West, which I think John Dahl did both Red Rock West and Last Seduction. Both are really good. The David O. Russell debut, Spanking the Monkey, came out that year. There's a good version of Body Snatchers that came out, and then Killing Zoe, which is Roger Avery's movie after he helped write Pulp Fiction or whatever. He actually directed that. So 94 was good, but then I was looking at all the bad movies that came out that year. And 94 is chock full of horrible movies. It almost disqualifies it.
I do want to mention a few others I love from that year. Bullets Over Broadway came out that year. It's probably my favorite Woody Allen movie. And then Nobody's Fool with Paul Newman.
Yeah.
Sort of a small little drama ensemble with, I think Bruce Willis is in it. It's really, really good. And I think you named pretty much everything else that I had listed for that year.
It's a great year for good movies, but it's also one of the worst years for just movies in general.
I actually want to kind of divert this a little bit because I'm an evil bastard. I want to talk about the year in music in 1991. And the reason that I want to do this is because it's 25 years old, and there was it was insane how influential this year was. This was the year, and I'll just be brief about it. This was the year that Nirvana's Nevermind came out, Pearl Jam's 10 came out, Metallica's Black Album, Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, U2's Achtung Baby, and R.E.M's Out of Time came out,
Wow.
Which, obviously just blew people's minds.
And do you know the story where, was it Nevermind came out on the same day as two other big albums?
Blood Sugar Sex Magic by Red Hot Chili Peppers, and the other one was Out of Time, maybe?
I don't know.
No, it was the Low End Theory. It was a Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory. That came out
all of that came out on the same day.
Yeah. But Prince released an album this year, Diamonds and Pearls. Michael Jackson released Dangerous this year. It was a huge year for music in general, and it's still being felt today. It's 25 years later. But when you go back and you look at everything we've been talking about, how, all these movies kind of coalesce in 1995 or somewhat surprisingly or 2007. You can just go on and on and on. 1991 was one of those years, and one of very few that resulted, afterwards. It was a enormous year, and I loved going through it and all the stuff that it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You evil bastard. Can we go back to talking about movies?
No. All right, fine.
All right. So the one that almost won for me, almost purely for just cultural status, was 1982. And I'm just going to rattle them off. Blade Runner, The Thing, E.T., Wrath of Khan, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Conan the Barbarian, Gandhi, Tron, Poltergeist, Rambo, Dark Crystal, Secret of Nim, Tootsie, Officer and a Gentleman, Porky's, Annie, The Verdict, Sophie's Choice, The Road Warrior, and Diner.
Wow. Yeah, it is a really good year, actually. Out of that one, out of all that group, obviously E.T. is really, really good for me. It's one of my first big movies, but a movie that I found later on in life was The Verdict.
Yeah.
That movie is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And you never, that's one of those that I probably judged by its title or whatever. And like, it sounds like another, oh, The Verdict. Okay. That doesn't sound exciting, but then you watch it and Paul Newman is so good.
It's just like Presumed Innocent, right? You're like, oh, that sounds boring. And then the movie is awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Boy, has any character gone sideways quicker than Rambo? From what was presented in First Blood to Rambo First Blood Part 2, that's a pretty enormous change.
Yeah, although I'm going to blame the 80s on that. The
80s, yeah,
because it starts off, if that movie came out, the first one came out in 82, so we're still sort of residually doing 70s movies by that point. And then you had, I believe, I can't look this up, I don't think, but I believe that's when the producers, Mario Kassar and, they came in and they started making these movies more fit for, the 80s audiences who were demanding like that bloodlust and whatever. It's that Cold War type of stuff. And so they started, like, movies started getting super ridiculous with that type of stuff. And, so the first one is sort of for a while there, it's a sensitive, Vietnam War veteran type of thing. Look at how he's been treated when he's gotten back and all that. And he's sort of forced to take on, what he does in the movie. But then by the second one, it's like, all right, I've already crossed that line. Let's just make this like a war. Yeah. By the second one though, it's the producers, Mario Kassar and Andrew G. Vanya, who ended up being producers, I believe, on Terminator and Terminator 2 and all that. Like, so back in the 80s, if you think about violent action film, that was those guys were usually behind it. But yeah, I think that's what happened to it. Was part 2. We're like, well, we know what people like about Rambo, and it's that he kills people. Let's make that all of it, man.
Yeah, that's a really good year. That's a good pick.
Yeah.
All right. Should we do a couple questions?
Yeah, let's do them.
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth.
I'm listening.
All right. So the one I think we're all most excited to answer is someone asked what our favorite scores or soundtracks are. And I'm going to try my best to do this conversation without breaking into song because I tend to sing the ones that I'm talking about. But I'll go ahead and lead off with probably my very favorite score ever is the one for The Untouchables.
Yeah.
With Costner and Sean Connery, and it's about Al Capone and prohibition and violence, and the score is just so percussive. It's all these orchestral hits like dun, 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 and it adds the tension so and then it brings in the high horn. Anyway, I could listen to that main theme anytime you want. Turn it on right now. I'm game.
That's Ennio Morricone, who somehow shamefully only won his first Oscar this year for Hateful Eight.
It was the Hateful Eight was a good score, but yeah, you're right. That was criminal that he hadn't won one before.
Agreed.
Yeah. Barrett, you got a good one?
Well, I love scores and big fan of all the main guys like, John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith and James Horner and all that stuff. There's some really great soundtracks that are kind of getting lost. It's not a big thing these days as movie soundtracks. My favorite of all time is Singles from 1992.
Yeah,
that's a great one.
A bad movie, but a terrific
Oh,
soundtrack.
take that back. You take that back.
Are you serious?
Singles is great,
I love
man.
that movie.
Yeah.
No, anyway, but that's for another conversation. But for the soundtrack itself is an incredible microcosm of Seattle in particular, with one exception, in the 90s, in the early 90s. And this came very, very close after what I just said about 1991 of the whole Nirvana Pearl Jam revolution, the grunge revolution. But it's got two of the best Pearl Jam songs on any album, and has a lot of Alice in Chains and Mother Love Bone, which basically birthed Pearl Jam. Chris Cornell doing an acoustic thing before an acoustic thing was a thing. And then, strangely enough, and the very last track on the soundtrack is a Smashing Pumpkins song, which has nothing to do with Seattle.
Yeah.
And actually serves to kind of be part of the theme music for the whole thing, along with Paul Westerberg's thing. So that's by far my favorite soundtrack.
Yeah. So, and who was it who originally did that song, Touch Me, I'm Dick? Was that Mother Love Bone?
It may have been Mother Love Bone, yeah, or Mudhoney. It was one of those, one of the OG Seattle bands.
Yeah, it's one of the best jokes of the movie is Matt Dillon talking about the meaning of "Touch Me, I'm Dick," and he's like, I think you could look at it two ways. Like, so one is my name is Dick, and you can touch me, and I just think you can see it both ways. He doesn't go into the other one. Never lets on that the song is just very simply about touching somebody's dick.
And his band is played by Pearl Jam, the actual members of Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
Chris Cornell makes a cameo in there, and a lot of guys do.
Yeah. I wrote down a whole bunch, but I mean, how do you pick out of this? The one that growing up that I loved the most was The Natural, the Randy Newman score for that movie. That's as iconic as it gets, but yeah. But recently, not really. Last of the Mohicans is always a good one, but that's one that's always brought up or whatever. But recently there's a commercial on TV that's been playing that Dark Knight score. And I realized how much I love that score too. Yeah. The Dark Knight, Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard are both credited on that, but that's a great score. But if I had to pick out of that, I'd probably go The Natural. But I have like 10 others.
Yeah, I really want to make sure I mention Michael Giacchino, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
Who is my very favorite active composer.
Right.
Who's done stuff like The Incredibles and Up, and Lost. But his main theme for the new Star Trek movies is just, it kills me. And it's in both of the films, that and it's just so good, and it's so Trek, and it's probably my favorite piece of score to listen to that's been written in the last 20 years.
Yeah. And if there was one other one that if I were to take a pick out of this list that I wrote that I'd feel upset if I didn't, is Fargo, the Carter Burwell soundtrack for the movie. There's times where I'll just be in the middle of something and all of a sudden I'll be like, so
I wonder what the listeners are going to think about us all singing our scores.
Yeah, probably not going to think too kindly of it, actually. But anyway, let's go on to unless Barrett, you got some more, or
well, everybody loves John Williams, and rightfully so. And as I was researching this, I really love the Home Alone score that he did. When I was listening to it, it sounds a lot like the Harry Potter theme. Like the Hedwig's thing. So that's one of my favorite. I love the Home Alone score, and I love a lot of what John Williams does.
Yeah, and it might be an interesting topic of conversation someday to talk about how composers sort of go back over older scores in their original. Like I love James Horner, but that guy did so many like repeat type of things. Like, one of the scores that I wrote down was Sneakers, because I love the Sneakers score so much. And, but then later on in Apollo 13 and Titanic and all that, you hear that stuff from Sneakers in it. And he's just kind of like doing that type of stuff. But you see that in a lot of those. Thomas Newman is like, I think, the biggest offender of this. Like almost everything is Shawshank Redemption nowadays when he comes out with a new score. And Hans Zimmer, even though I really like Hans Zimmer, I like all these guys. But Hans Zimmer, I mean, you can hear Pirates of the Caribbean and Crimson Tide, which he did a few years before that. So,
it's funny. Crimson Tide was on earlier today, and I was watching it, and I literally had that thought. That sounds like because there's that part where it's like dum 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 dum.
Oh yeah. It sounds exactly like what he does with Pirates of the Caribbean later, and of course, Pirates of the Caribbean is the one that he's known for. But
and it's great. I love the score to that first Pirates movie.
Yeah, but it's Crimson Tide where you first hear that score, kind of. So.
All right, I think we probably have time for like one more question, but before we do that, I want to say one more score.
Okay.
Star Trek VI: Undiscovered Country.
Ooh.
Just I would encourage you to go listen to the main theme.
Is that also Horner?
Is that also who?
Horner? James Horner?
I don't think it is.
I know he did some Star Treks, right?
Was the theme Jerry Goldsmith?
It might be Jerry Goldsmith.
Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith's the guy who did it.
All right, so anyway, it's got this. It starts like the opening credits with this very simple na 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 na, and then that just repeats over and over, and he just starts throwing all these layers. And there's a moment where there's like 3 or 4 counter melodies going all at once, and it culminates in this huge bombastic. God, I love it so much. Like, and I love that movie. Maybe my second favorite Star Trek movie, but I think half the reason I love it so much is that score. And I just wanted to mention that because I'm close personal friends with the composer whose name I couldn't remember.
Yeah, and I like that movie too. It was sort of a makeup movie for The Final Frontier that they came out with before that. Well, it was all
a lot of people didn't like the Whales #4. I do, but
I know a lot of people who love that movie though.
There are, but I think 6 is sort of like that era's Wrath of Khan, where they sort of. One of the reasons I like it so much is it gives us some good space battles, but it also has like this big like murder mystery at the heart of it, which is sort of a different feel for a Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love that movie.
I don't know. Can we stay on this for just a little bit longer? Because if we've got so much material on it, because I've got a really good one that I want to ask you guys about.
Go for it.
Skip the last question, and then we'll just talk about this till we're done.
Yeah. Okay. So Alfonso Cuarón in 1998 released Great Expectations with Gwyneth Paltrow and Ethan Hawke and Anne Bancroft and everything.
Yeah. Not a very good movie.
Now, see, that's where I would differ. I think it's a very good movie and a terrific soundtrack.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if, Jeremy, have you heard the soundtrack?
I saw the movie once and didn't like it, so I couldn't tell you anything about it.
I think it's kind of up your alley in terms of like kind of the...
it's going to be a bunch of like pop rock, isn't it?
It is absolutely pop rock, very Bieber-esque. It's got No, it's got like Tori Amos did some of the theme and everything, and I'm not a huge Tori Amos fan, but the stuff that she did was really good. It also has an acoustic Chris Cornell song that's really terrific.
Oh, wow.
And so the whole thing is terrific. I can listen to it start to finish, which again is a weird thing for soundtracks these days. So if you get a chance, everybody check out Great Expectations soundtrack from 1990.
I love that you're contributing soundtracks. And we're not just saying all scores because I think you're a lot more familiar with that side of the music than I am anyway but I know that I bought the soundtrack to Jerry Maguire just because I loved so many of the songs in it. And of course, that's the same guy that did singles. So say what you want about Cameron Crowe. I think he's one of the best up there with Tarantino at picking the right pre-existing songs to underscore moments in his movies.
That's an excellent point. And to go back to Tarantino's soundtracks, especially in the 90s, were some of the best that have ever existed. And it was a complete mishmash of eras. He wasn't beholden to whatever time period the movie was in. He would just take it and throw it in, and it would make perfect sense.
Yeah, he, you know, I guess what his musical background was that he would always listen to these records that, you know, his mom left behind or whatever, or not whatever it was. He used to listen to these records that have songs on them that you don't really, they're not really the super popular hits of those eras, but you listen to them and wonder why they weren't, because there's so many good songs in there. The one that always pops in my head for Tarantino is the Down in Mexico song during the lap dance scene of Death Proof, because it's just so real. It's just such a good song. You know, forget that there's lap dancing going on, but the song itself is just amazing. And it's something I had never heard before. And apparently Tarantino, he had some rare recording of it or whatever, and popped it on. He's so proud of it.
I don't think there's ever, or one of the few times that there's a better pairing of a song and a scene is when Uma Thurman puts on Son of a Preacher Man in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, for sure.
That's beautiful. It's perfect.
I owned that soundtrack. I listen to it regularly. It's great. I'm surprised we didn't mention that.
Besides the blaring surf music, else is really good.
Yeah, that's the only thing that kind of dates it is the surf music, because that didn't really catch on, did it? But the timeless stuff for sure is good.
The surfy song.
Yeah, I do too. But they're horribly dated. I guess another score that I would throw on there, one that always gets me pumped in the movie, is Heat. Elliot Goldenthal did that one. But during the robbery scene, it's really very simple. You know, it's ding, 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 ding. You know, it's all it really does, but it really grabs you and puts you in that movie. So, and the rest of the scores too is good too, but it's that in particular that I always think about when it comes to Heat. So soundtracks and scores, obviously a big, huge topic, and it took up all our time. But anyway, we'll get to some more questions down the road, I'm sure. Hopefully, we may have to do a mini pod full of questions just to get to the backlog of them at some point. But anyway, we'll get to that at some point. If you have any comments or rants about this podcast, go to SoundCloud and lay it on us. Anyway, that's the podcast for this week. As always, it's Chris Atkinson, Jeremy Scott, and Barrett Scher signing off.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit Cinemasins.com.
Yeah, so you've all heard our new theme song for the intro and the outro that was made by an artist named Lorange, L'Orange. He's a Nashvilleian and reached out to us, and we love his music. We want everybody to listen to it. If you go to his website, it is lorangeproductions.com. You can hear all of his stuff, and blew us away. So go there, listen to his stuff, follow him on Twitter, stalk his house, get into his back seat in his car. Just
no stalking, no stalking at all.
All right.
Well, you can insert that, right? Do we need to go over that?
That's what she said.
That's right.